just as a starting point, if you here are representative of UK enterprise as a whole, social, business, the whole works, only you folks over there employ anybody other than yourselves. Only the people in the front 2 rows there employ more than 10 people. And you would need 50 rooms as full as this before you found one company that employed more than 250 people. That is the business, the enterprise ecology of the UK. The UK is a bit more SME and micro and sole trader focused than the rest of Europe, but that's how it is. Governments and governmental institutions, whether they're European or national, find it very, very difficult to understand this, even when they look at the data, because governments are only big. Governments start at 250 people employed and go upwards. They do not have this view. So when we look at early stage, we're looking at an extraordinary diversity. Very many people, 250,000 people wanting to start a social venture of some kind in the UK alone. We're talking about people largely from disadvantaged backgrounds. You're much more likely to start a social venture if you've had personal experience of adversity, if you come from a minority group. There are journeys that people go on. These are not single point interventions that are needed. And it is incredibly diverse, small and large, innovative and copycat, asset-based, people-based, Anglo-Saxon entrepreneur, heroic-led through to cooperatives and mutuals and everything in between. It is all of that. We spoke to the marketing director of Guinness a couple of years ago for some advice, and he said, do you know your problem in social enterprises? You've got one word. It's like having one word for shop. And then you're surprised that customers are confused because they wanted to buy shoes and they went to a butcher's. But you only have the word shop. So nobody can find their way around. And consequently, we get into lots of arguments. Now, here's a starting point. Because social entrepreneurs are more likely to come from disadvantaged backgrounds, because that's what gives them the motivation to do something social, they're much less likely to have a bank of mum and dad handy, or to have the confidence or skills or networks in their immediate family and friends network to be able to launch a venture successfully. It doesn't tend to stop them starting, but it does mean that they don't thrive as much. So to unlock that potential, and the potential you really want of authentic innovation, innovation by the people who've lived with the problem, the social problem that needs solving, you do need grants, you do need skills work, you do need networks and hubs and so on. And I'm not clear at the moment in the consultation that very early stage, the equivalent of the bank of mum and dad as a grant is in there. The second bit, this journey, this idea, a social entrepreneur starts and goes through a journey with key steps and stages from thinking about it to trying it out, to burning the boats, going full-time, to employing other people, to taking investment, and so on. Each of these psychological and practical steps, you need a continuous ladder of support, because if you have any gaps that are too big, then all this talent will get blocked. And that's what we have in the UK at the moment, where we have big society capital being prepared to back VC level social investment, but the angel investment stage, the first risk capital, is missing. Our big venture challenge is trying to start that and having some success in incentivizing angels in, but I think it just re-emphasizes that unless you've got interventions all the way along, interestingly Scotland's the only UK country that does have that sort of seamless pipeline, then you're going to get blockages, and a lot of your money is going to be wasted because people can't get past the barrier. And that does mean a need for mixed finance, returnable but not 100% returnable. You need grants minus 100% return. You need the social investments at 100% return plus a bit, but you're also going to have the sort of thing which Venturesome was fantastic at in the UK of minus 10%. You're losing 10% of your money each stage, because each stage there are risks, different levels of risk. Definitions. Completely agree with Alison. Probably the least interesting or useful question in social enterprise is, what is a social enterprise? However, if you're introducing any sort of regulatory system, any sort of system that gives you a passport across countries, across the EU, you're going to have to do something. So how do we handle it? Europe has a lot of very different models, and we heard this morning from Stuart about the co-op tendency in Southern Europe and the more entrepreneurial-led Northern Europe. To me, it's really important that the EU intervention focuses on the sum of all these models, not just on the intersect between them. Because if it goes for just the intersect between them, that is really narrow. And the two things that I worry about in the consultation are the restriction on profit redistribution. And just talk to anybody who does microfinance or fair finance. You know, if you're borrowing capital to lend to the poor, the majority of your money is going to go back out to the financiers. Of course it is, and you're not going to qualify. And exactly what counts as a democratic or participatory governance and ownership structure. Some social ventures require such bravery, such commitment by the social entrepreneur that participatory governance is just unviable. I'm thinking, just an example, Bill Wells, who came up with a really funky system for wheelchairs, for people who need indoor and outdoor wheelchairs, two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. A simple thing of this two-wheel drive electric wheelchair, but an interchangeable front axle, so you can put an extra motor on it to go cross-country. Lovely. He mortgaged his house to do it. It is a social enterprise. But don't tell me you had to have participatory governance, because you don't mortgage your house on the basis of participatory governance, and it would never have happened had he not done that. So, definitions. Social entrepreneurs say they need a variety of things: confidence, cash, skills, talent, markets, routes to market. Now, a lot of these are covered in what we're hearing from Europe. I'm not sure that talent for operational capacity is covered. And anybody who's been working with a developing and expanding social enterprise will know that that COO is so vital, and it's a very different skill set from the entrepreneur. Talent into the sector is very important. And routes to market. The routes to market that are talked about are public procurement. Now, to me, public procurement is the dullest aspect of social enterprise. Business to business social enterprises, business to consumer social enterprises offer much more flexibility. They get outside of government commissioning rules and so on. But at the moment, that doesn't seem to be there, and it's tricky. Look at the social enterprise mark in the UK. Well-intentioned, didn't click. And it is very difficult to get a customer promise that matters to the retail public for social enterprise as a whole. You know, if somebody sells me something that's labelled organic, I know it's got no chemicals in it. I know what the promise is. What is the customer promise for social enterprise? Or do we have to have different customer promises for different subsectors? It needs a lot of thought, but it is crucially important if we're going to have markets to buy the stuff outside of government. And then finally, what happens if all this works? So we get a vibrant ecology of social entrepreneurs, support for social entrepreneurs, intermediaries that provide support, social investors. How is all that accessible or navigable if I'm a start-up from some council estate in Bolton? How do I find out? How do I know? How do I judge which is the relevant offer from all these different things? Now, this is already starting to become a problem in the social investment area, where there are now a number of offers. We've had 4 major corporates offer growth stage social interventions in the last 6 months alone. How do I know, as a startup, that these exist and which one is best? Where's the quality mark? And here's where I absolutely agree with Alison. We have to have a data commons. We have to have, not just for the social entrepreneurs, but for the intermediaries, a common language of measuring success. Because otherwise, the social venture intermediaries, the support agencies that get funded, will be the ones that can write the best application to the EU. I don't want that. I want the ones to be funded that achieve the best impact for the social entrepreneurs and their ventures. And we can only get that if the EU insists, if you take our money, you will publish the data, and you will publish it in a common form. That's the only way that we can get this going. Mainstream, this is a social business initiative, not just one for civil society agencies. It's also, I think, an initiative for business entrepreneurs who want to be a bit more social. It's not just an initiative for specialist social entrepreneur or social enterprise agencies like ours, but also for the mainstream. And I think it should be. Do you remember that 250,000 people across the UK trying to start a social venture? At the moment, only 1% of them get any sort of formal support. And nobody's telling me that the specialist agencies are going to get sufficient resource to scale up times 100 times. It's just not going to happen. So we have to get universities doing this, chambers of commerce doing this, community foundations doing this, local authorities doing this, all sorts of agencies doing social entrepreneur support, acting as agents for social investment. And that comes back to the quality measures, because if it diversifies outside of the specialists, how do we keep a handle on the quality? We can only do that if we have quality measures that are relevant to the entrepreneurs. I think the future for social enterprise, social entrepreneurs, is fundamentally different from how it is now, or we will have failed. Because if it still looks like a specialist niche area in 5 or 10 years' time, we just haven't broken out of the ghetto. Social business initiative could open up to a much broader and much more mainstream world, a world where if I live on that council estate in Bolton, there's somewhere I already know and trust that can act as that starting point on the journey of social enterprise. I don't have to find my way to something specialist that I've never heard of before and don't trust. That sort of mainstream future is a very, very big challenge for many of us in the room, but I think we have to have the courage to seize the chance, because that's where we get social enterprise across the board, across the economy, and have a much better future.